Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring this wildly unique intersection between global pop culture and new religious movements. We're looking at a text that basically merges the blockbuster success of Hollywood with ultra-ancient spiritual history, and then ties it all together with hard-nosed modern PR strategy. It is a completely captivating read, and breaking it down is really going to reveal how some modern faiths construct their narratives to connect with global audiences.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering spiritual messages from Hollywood, icebergs and past lives, a night of ancient Mu, the principle of leverage, and finally hitting a global home run.
All right, part 1, Spiritual Messages from Hollywood, Exploring the Claims.
So according to this publication, which originates from the Japanese religious movement Happy Science, this text reveals a dialogue with Leonardo DiCaprio's guardian spirit. The movement's leader, Ryuho Okawa, claims to have conducted a spiritual interview with this entity back in December of 2019. And what's really fascinating here is how the text uses a globally recognized figure to anchor these incredibly unique theological claims. It's not just a discussion about acting methods, you know? It's framed as this profound revelation about the deep, spiritual origins of earthly talent.
Let's move to part 2, Icebergs and Past Lives, Uncovering Spiritual Causes.
This text bridges two incredibly distinct worlds. On one side, the guardian spirit asserts that 8,000 to 9,000 years ago he actually served the Norse god Odin as a hunter in this freezing, brutal land. And on the other side, we have the actor's Hollywood success. The author basically posits that the actor's real-world cinematic successes in freezing environments are actually driven by these deep subconscious memories. The text explicitly links his past life in the freezing cold to the visceral reality of the Titanic iceberg, and later to his physically demanding Oscar-winning performance in the freezing wilderness of The Revenant, so it's saying that earthly success is literally a direct manifestation of past life spiritual experiences.
But actually, the text pushes the timeline back even further. Part 3, A Night of Ancient Mu, The Deep Past.
Our source material goes on to claim that long before serving Odin, this specific spirit was a knight in the ultra-ancient, legendary Mu civilization, serving a figure known as La Mu. By integrating elements like the Mu civilization, which is a concept really popular in esoteric and speculative histories, the text weaves the actor's soul into the very fabric of the religion's grand cosmic timeline. So the text builds this exact chronological roadmap. It starts way back in the ultra-ancient era as a knight in Mu. Then we jump to 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, serving Odin as a hunter in the freezing cold. And finally, we arrive in the present day, where all those specific experiences culminate in immense Hollywood success. They use this timeline to explain the soul's journey into modern entertainment, essentially suggesting that true stardom is millions of years in the making.
Now part 4. The principle of leverage, a cinematic strategy. This is where things get really interesting.
In this portion of the interview, the purported guardian spirit totally shifts gears. He stops talking about his own esoteric past lives and begins advising the Happy Science organization directly on how to achieve absolute global recognition. The text frames this Hollywood spirit as like an expert consultant in global PR, offering a literal roadmap for how a religion can break out of domestic markets and influence the entire world.
To do this, the text introduces a key concept, leverage, or teko no ginri in Japanese. Now, in finance, leverage means using borrowed capital to multiply potential returns. But here, they're talking about cultural leverage. The argument is that spreading the truth of their savior figure El Cantare simply cannot happen purely through traditional proselytizing. It absolutely requires the massive, exponential, multiplying power of cinema, art, and music.
And the publication uses Titanic as its prime example. It points out that Titanic was essentially just a romance about a sinking ship, yet it conquered the globe and became this universal cultural touchstone. The underlying message here is crystal clear. If a simple fictional romance can capture the attention of the entire world through the leverage of blockbuster cinema, well then a movement carrying what it believes to be ultimate spiritual truths absolutely must utilize that exact same cinematic leverage to succeed.
Which brings us to part 5, hitting a global home run. Future strategies. The spirit emphasizes in this passage that being known worldwide, and specifically being known in a highly praiseworthy way, is completely non-negotiable for the religion's success. It's not enough to just make movies. They have to make movies that shatter cultural barriers and command universal respect. This direct quote perfectly captures the urgency in the text. We seem fixated on base hits, but we want to hit a home run. Honestly, it's incredibly pragmatic language for a spiritual interview, right? The text is urging the movement to stop settling for domestic niche successes, those base hits. Small successes just aren't enough to change the world. They need a global, undeniable blockbuster. They really have to hit one out of the park.
And to achieve this home run, the guardian spirit in the text actually pledges concrete strategic support. First, a promise to advise the movement's film industry directly. Second, a prediction that the movement will eventually cross paths and collaborate with major earthly artists. Third, a really fascinating promise to literally send angels of beauty and art down from the spirit world to inspire creators. And finally, a directive to overcome domestic media prejudice, which the text notes often ignores or shuns overtly religious films. It's a comprehensive, multi-tiered plan blending supernatural intervention with hard-nosed media strategy.
Which brings us to the very end of our analysis. This text is such a remarkable example of how a modern movement contextualizes global fame. By tying an A-list actor to ancient mythology and using that connection to validate a blueprint for cinematic leverage, the publication attempts to bridge the gap between faith and Hollywood. It leaves us with a truly fascinating dynamic to consider regarding how modern faiths might leverage global entertainment to spread their message. So, based on all these claims, how do you view the intersection of global pop culture and the expansion of new religious movements? It's a big question, and one I hope you'll continue to explore long after this explainer ends.